Hello and welcome. My name is Miranda, and in today's video we'll be doing two things. We'll be doing the Use It Up challenge with our Himi Miya paint here. You can see we still have quite a ways to go before we use up all this paint. And I've also tested this paint on 5 more paper surfaces. So I'm comparing about 16, I don't know what this means, but I'm comparing about 16 different papers, and I've had to split it up into a few videos. So if you missed the first video, I will link that up in the corner here for you. So make sure you pause this video, watch that one first, and then come back to this one, and then there will be one more that will finish out this paper series next Friday. So make sure you subscribe down below with notifications turned on if you don't want to miss that. Okay, let's get right into the papers, and then at the end I'll give you an update on this paint. The next paper in this massive experiment will be this Paul Rubens watercolor block. This is 140 pound or 300 GSM, 100% cotton, hot pressed paper. And I have done just playing. It is really thick. Made me think I had more than one page on it. All right, and I think I would like to still use these travel brushes and see what I think of them even further, but I do need like this cheap flat brush to wet the whole paper as usual. I didn't actually notice a whole lot of difference between this and my regular cold press paper that I use all the time, except my water washes tended to dry up a little bit more quickly, so I had to use even more water than I was used to on those pre-layers of water. And then like heavy applications of my paint did appear to be a little bit shinier on this paper than on my cold pressed paper. Also, I tried to add, keep adding a bit of paint to this section in the middle behind the girl. I know you don't see her yet and you won't for a minute, but I just kept going over and over that section trying to get the color I wanted just right, and it started to peel the paper up, so I don't think you can rework this paper a whole lot before it gets kind of angry with you. Okay, so I have sketched out this little person on tracing paper. The only reason I use tracing paper, well, there's two reasons. I have a lot of it and I almost never ever use it. And the second reason was because I could kind of see my painting better behind it, so I could place her a little bit more intuitively, I'm hoping. So then I have my graphite transfer paper here. I just pet the cat and now his hair's all over me. Graphite transfer paper, which I haven't had much luck with this particular edge of this sheet, but we'll see. And I just want to put in her outlines, basically. Let's see if that came through at all. Oh yeah, came through quite clearly this time around. So now the hard part, painting her. So I will use the smallest brush out of this travel set. This is a size 4 round. Wish me luck. These little travel brushes have turned out to be pretty darn amazing, and for what I paid for them, holy moly. So I do have those linked in the description box below if you want to check out them for yourselves. So far, I've used them on, I don't even know, 6 paintings, and I'm pretty darn impressed with them. So check them out if you're interested in a good travel brush. Here we have Lost. The paper choice for today will be Aquaboard. I have only worked on this one more time in my past that I remember with this one. This was World Watercolor Month last year, and I think the prompt was, yeah, I have no idea. We'll be doing the prompt effervescent. I know we're far past July. Yep, I know. It's all good. It's still fun to have words to give you ideas to paint things on. And so we'll do effervescent. And I suspect working on the surface will actually be a little harder than I remember. And I'll go ahead and try these brushes again. I want to use them several times, get a good feel for them. So far, I am very much liking them. And for $12.99, which is what I paid, who knows what they are today, I think I'm happy so far. So let's keep playing with them. So to use this, you really should water the whole board first and then let it completely dry. It gets rid of some air bubbles. And I knew that, but I wanted to try not doing it to see what happens, because I've only tried it the other way, and it's time to do something different. And yes, there were more bubbles by not watering it first and letting it dry, so keep that in mind if you're going to use this. Great, that worked well. Shoot. Speaking of bleeding, this bleeds a lot. It bleeds into the adjacent surfaces that are even dry, or that definitely appear to be dry at least. And you saw it go right under my tape there. And granted, that was washi tape that is not very sticky, and I didn't try any kind of stickier tape, but boy, it went right under that, and you'll see it bleed here in a minute. Well, that part is still wet, but there's parts that look dry later, and it bleeds right into those parts, so that's kind of interesting. It is pretty though. Sometimes when you have a color bleed into another section, it actually makes your painting look kind of cool because it brings the colors together, but sometimes you're not going to want that. But you can see I've used masking fluid, and it works really well on this surface. You do have to be careful. This surface erases. Like your paint will just come off of this surface really, really easily. So you have to be really careful about how often you go over your painting. All right, it is time to take the masking fluid off, and I'm a little nervous about this because I'm afraid it's going to pull extra paint off and so on on this aqua board, but let's see what happens. Oh, it's coming off really easily. Well, that's a bonus. Just make sure I keep clean places on my piece of masking tape I'm using to pull it off. Pretty painless so far. Need a new piece of tape. I happen to have one right here. Try washi tape. It's all working. Well, there it is. Effervescent. That was fun doing that multi-layer masking. I really enjoyed that. We're moving on to Strathmore 500 series. This is 100% cotton paper. I have used this paper before. I didn't like it. It didn't really act like cotton when I used it. It also doesn't feel like cotton, so it's kind of weird. We'll see what I think of it today. Since it's a different day, different time, different painting, we'll be doing more owls. I don't know why, but there is a prompt for World Watercolor Month. I know it's already gone past, but the prompt is feathered, and this is the picture I want to try and paint, and I will probably regret it because it's very intricate. Someday I will find a way to make paintings like this a little more simplified, and I do have some ideas for that. I'm just not willing to try that today yet. All right, wish me luck. Well, my initial thoughts with this paper were absolutely correct. It just has a very slick feel, a slick surface. Also, I have my paper taped down and it still warped a lot, like a ton, so I got big puddles. Thankfully, I was using colors that didn't create mud when they all blended together, so I just lucked out in that regard. But it did dry flat, it did dry very pretty looking, but I think this paper is much more suited for drier applications of paint. So if you work in a very dry way, then this paper is probably going to be fine for you, but it is not recommended, at least not by me, for very wet applications. Luckily, the owls and the babies, well, they're all owls, but the owl, mama, and the babies were pretty dry applications of paint, so that all worked pretty well. And I did use the smallest brush in this travel set, which was the size 4 round, and it got teeny tiny little lines. I did the teeny tiny little baby eyes with it even, and it worked perfectly. So still impressed with the brushes, still liking them, still recommend them. And the paper, if you have a choice to buy a different cotton paper, I would recommend choosing that over this. This just feels more like cellulose paper. It just doesn't seem like cotton paper to me. Now we'll be working on the Etcher sketchbook. This one will be fun. It's 100% cotton. You can see I've done lots of stuff in here. This is the A4 size, and I just spent a lot of time sketching these little jewels because there is a prompt called Jewel, and that's what we're going to do. So I need to spend some time erasing all my layout marks and my sketchy stuff, and we'll get to painting. I'm very excited. Look where the paint levels are so far. We are actually starting to use a few of these paints. It's about time. Ah, Etcher, dear Etcher, I love you. I know that's silly, but this is my absolute favorite sketchbook to pull out. Any of my 3 sizes. This is the biggest size. I have all 3 sizes. I love working on this paper. It is so pleasant. And it is thinner than 140 pounds. I think it comes out to about 105 pounds actually. It's 230 GSM. And it's just a joy to work on it. And I'll talk a little bit more about some things that I really like about it in a minute, because I'm about to interrupt me to tell you a little bit more about the painting itself here. I feel like I've gone as far as I can go with watercolor. I expected these jewels to be easy and all of that, but yeah, they're not even a little. So I'm going to do something I almost never do. Have I ever lined another painting? I don't think so, at least not this kind of painting. So I'm going to take my Micron pen. I found this particular version of Micron works best on cold press watercolor paper, and line this thing. So one thing that I wanted to tell you about it is once you get a section wet, it stays wet a lot longer than I'm used to. So I have to be really careful with myself when I'm painting that I don't go over and try and do my next layer too soon, not too quickly, because it will just bleed out into the rest and be all happy about doing it. So I have to spend a bit of time waiting for things to dry here. But that is great if you need a little extra working time, and here's how all the jewels turned out. I highly recommend this paper. It's really fun. Now we are working on the Handbook Watercolor Company something journal. The Handbook Co. Journal, 200 GSM or 95 pounds, cold press, acid free. I have done a few things in here. You have seen this on my channel previously if you've been around from the beginning. But we'll give this one a try. It is not cotton. Ooh, I was afraid I just wiped off the majigger hoozamawajugug. Okay, well, let's move on here. I'm gonna use this brush, I guess. Ah, scary. Away we go. Well, because I had just finished my dot card paintings on my Moleskine watercolor notebook, if you missed that video, I will link that up in the corner for you to check out. I just had a feeling this particular paper was going to remind me a lot of that paper, and it absolutely did. Your paint kind of sits more on the surface of this paper. It's not cotton or anything, so that is part of what happens when you're not working with cotton paper, at least the non-cotton papers that I have. And you kind of get streaks when you're trying to do multiple layers. So glazing, multiple layers, that kind of thing, I just don't think works well on this paper at all. In fact, I try and do some glazing shadows behind the black keys. Oh, it just is a disaster. So not recommended for that. But if you want just a cheap little watercolor sketchbook, I actually don't know if this watercolor sketchbook is that cheap, but if you want something you can toss in your pocket or whatever and do some maybe drier work, really dry washes, or like line and ink kind of stuff, then this might be the paper for you, but I do not recommend it. All right, here it is all done. Let's take the masking fluid off, see what we're left with those beautiful bright white highlights. So I guess we should clean those up a bit and give you my thoughts on this paper, if I haven't already, is that it's fine for more dry work, but you can see where I did the shadows and messed up and tried to pull it off. This isn't working. Where I tried to pull it off, then because I messed it up and it just won't pull off, it basically destroys the paper pretty much immediately. So there's no pulling off of anything that you might have made a mistake on. So that shadow is just gonna look pretty horrible, and it's just gonna be what it is. These lines kind of need to look really straight because pianos are really straight. This is just a typical cellulose watercolor sketchbook, so if that's what you're going into expecting, then you will be quite happy with the results. Well, there is instrument. Here's what we have left of these Himi Miya paints. So still a bunch of paint, and we do have some, I can't find my hand. We do have some that are getting pretty empty. The same colors as I pointed out in the last video, but let's get to the spreadsheet so I can show you the numbers and how many paintings and how long we have worked with these. When I was watching the video from last week that got released, I noticed some of the things were missing out of this spreadsheet. So I did add whatever was missing. Some of these, yep, I think these 4 here were missing out of this spreadsheet. So the numbers I gave you last week were not quite accurate, but I think they are this week. We have used this paint for a total of 1,384 square inches of painting. And we have painted with them so far for 22 hours, 27 minutes, and 50 seconds. And this is all as close as I can get to accurate. And I did not weigh them, and I already started painting on the next paper, so we do not have another weight. But after I finish the last 4 papers, then I will definitely weigh them and see if we are any lighter or not. Because it's kind of interesting how in grams, which is a big measurement, I get that, but we're not going down hardly at all. So it's kind of interesting because 22 hours doesn't seem like a whole lot of painting, but look how many paintings it is. So we don't, well, I don't paint for very long at one time. And the paintings that I still think take forever, like one of these is 3 hours and one is 2 hours. And that's the most I have ever spent on one of these particular paintings, which I find very interesting. But 1,384 square inches is quite a bit. So our paint is going a long way and it is still very full. Well, I don't know about you, but I am finding this experiment very interesting, and I'm really glad that I'm doing all of these papers as back-to-back as possible because it is really eye-opening about a few things. So make sure you are subscribed down below so you don't miss the last episode of this 3-part series here for using all the papers that I have. There's more papers out there in the world. These are just ones that I happen to have here at my house in my drawer and wherever, sketchbooks. So how many different papers do you guys have at your house? I'd love to know. Let me know down in the comments below. Also, hitting the like button down below if you appreciated this video really helps my channel out. Thank you very much. All right, you guys, I will see you in the next video. Bye for now. Hello and welcome. My name is Miranda, and in today's video, we'll be doing, I wish I could talk. Okay, I have sketched out this little person. It's about time. Thank you, phone.